Hi. If you're all anyone's there, great to see you made it to the link. Gonna try to, I don't see any viewers right now. I'm gonna try to get everyone up and over here, which would be nice because as you saw, we had some technical issues. So it looks like we don't have anyone yet. So I'm gonna do a quick search for the folks. I apologize if you are catching on here. To participate in this. I appreciate you being around, and well, I'm here. So let's see. Select all. Good news for those of you taking the American history reasons, we'll be ready, set, go for tomorrow because we won't have all these technical issues tomorrow. Well, at least that's the plan, right? Now my thing is still saying that there's only one of us. No one's watching except oh, that's me. I'm probably that one watcher. Okay, we'll get going here. And hopefully we can get some folks in. Well, maybe not. Oh, it looks like we do have some folks on, so I'm gonna keep us going, just and see who's there and everything that's going on. You know, I said I do apologize that we have done this a little funky, but of course we are here all to study that for the global Regents that is going to be held in the fantastic state of New York tomorrow. I have my notes with me, and of course I want to start at the kind of one of the key spots at the beginning, to the best of our ability at least, right? So usually the first few questions that will pop up will contain to geography. And so if you are getting a geography question, it's probably going to be asking particularly about monsoons. They love monsoons. And what you want to know about monsoons is they're primarily found in India and that there's seasonal winds and rain. And these seasonal winds and rain make, oh, there's my chat. Look, I'm able to chat now. So I'm here if anyone else is here. And I would love to have, of course, your comments and questions so that I can help you out. I did have some questions earlier, and of course, unfortunately, I lost them, so I apologize. So we had our seasonal monsoons as far as that's a key one. Usually, I would say you're going to see something about geography in the first, like, 5 questions. You know, again, I have no actual skills with or like any inside information. Unfortunately, I wish I did. Then you want to think about some pretty simple things that you probably studied throughout your year in your history classes. So, you know, islands, mountains, deserts, rainforests, rivers, river valleys, and what you'll probably see those on, if you see them at all, will probably more than likely be a question referring to an essay. So it's going to be a question saying, like, how are humans affected by a geographic feature, like an island. So my biggest example. So first of all, an island, here's your island, right? It's isolated from everything else. So you're going to be isolated, which is going to mean that you're going to be less likely to have interactions with other people. But you're also going to be a little safer. So that's, you know, you're not going to have as much cultural influences, but you're going to be a little safer because you're so isolated. You're also going to, you know, your diet and your, you know, things like that are going to be really different. You're going to eat a lot of fish. You are going to, if, you know, as you build a little bit, you're going to have a strong navy. So some key examples on this, the English, Great Britain, right? They are a small little island, but they took over half the world for a little while. And that island is key to why they were so dominant, because they had this really strong navy for the longest time. People didn't mess with the British Navy because it was just silly to mess with the British Navy. And the same thing with, you know, the Japanese. So the Japanese, the island of Japan, right? They were, first of all, major fish eaters, but also they were isolated from much of what else was going on in Asia. So it took them a little while to kind of catch up on everything else everyone was doing. Then when they finally did, it kind of, you know, turned a little disastrous, of course, with World War II. But those are some key things. As far as like a geography question, I would guess it would probably be more like an essay, maybe one or two multiple choices. And that essay question will probably be, how does an island or how does a geographic feature influence the world, the civilization that's around it? Which also leads to one of the other major things you'll need to kind of think about is, and really good examples are rivers, okay? And that's always the first couple, you know, last year when you guys studied your river civilizations in Global 1, you talked about key river civilizations throughout the world. And when you're thinking of that, you want to think, of course, of Egypt. I do have my notes in front of me just because I want to make sure I know what I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight. You're going to want to talk about Egypt and the Nile River, okay? You're going to want to talk about the Tigris and the Euphrates, the Fertile Crescent, right? That moon-shaped area of land, which is today modern-day Iraq. And that's the Sumerian River, right? Or the Sumerians. You want to talk about the Indus River of civilization and the, which is the Indian people. Just kind of see what's going on here. I don't know if my chat's not working. I don't see any comments yet. That's fine. And then the Yangtze or the Yellow River in Japan. And those are all really great examples of times that rivers and geography have affected other civilizations. I always love, you know, Egypt. I think that's a great, easy one. You know, Egypt is in the middle of a desert. They have the long Nile. It actually runs this way. Runs from south to north up to the Mediterranean Sea. But if it wasn't for that river, there is no way the Egyptian civilization would have started. They have to have that river in order to get their irrigation, transportation, it's their food source. There's three, all from that river. So that's very key. And you can kind of take that with each of the civilizations. And again, you want to keep in mind the Egyptians in the Nile, the Sumerians or the Mesopotamians, same place, in the Fertile Crescent with the Tigris and the Euphrates, those two rivers coming down what is modern day Iraq. You want to talk about the Yangtze. You want to talk about the Yangtze in China, the Yellow River, and the Indus River in India. So those are the key rivers you want to think about. And you also want to think some keywords here. Hunter-gatherers. So that's, you know, before civilization started, before we sat where we are and we built our houses and we kind of did what we needed to do, we were hunter-gatherers. And so that meant that we would fight for, you know, we'd go try to get food, we'd hunt, we'd gather, hence the name. And then once we settled down, we had what we call the agrarian revolution. So we're going to stop, we're going to stay where we are, we're going to start farming. Agrarian means farming, good word, also agrarian. And once we start farming, we're going to stay right there, and we're going to be able to build our houses, we're going to be able to build our cities, and those are the birth of civilization. So those are some key things. Also on my notes that I want to talk about too is cultural diffusion. They love throwing that in. That's the idea when you want, when one country is kind of sharing some of its information with others, and as they, oh my goodness, I think I just lost something. Okay, no, I'm good, sorry. When you are looking, I'm just trying to get some chats up here. Sorry that it's not quite what I wanted to do as far as that went today. And I don't want to putz with anything because I'm worried that I'm going to break it more. So cultural diffusion, sorry. So when you have one person who, one culture that is bringing culture into another, area. So again, that's really great, like China and Japan, India and China, they share like religions. They're constantly kind of questioning the same things. For those of you who are having questions, I know it's probably really frustrating. I have no idea why I don't think my chat is working correctly, and I don't want to mess anything up. So if you have a question, you can just post it right on YouTube, which I know is not as convenient as posting on a chat that I think I'm probably missing. So feel free to post on that, and I'll be able to check on the YouTube that's over here. All right, so the other thing I want to talk about in my lesson here, a little bit about China. Okay, some keywords in there is, dynasty. Anything you hear about dynasty, just pick China. Mandate of heaven. This is the idea that a king or queen is going to get all of their power from heaven, from God. And then they get the dynastic cycle in the process of that. And basically, to sum that up, is that if a king or queen, the dynasty, right, emperor, empress, right, if they're doing well, they'll stay in power, and they'll gain support, and they'll do good things for the people, and they'll keep that power. But when things don't go well, they will cycle around, and then a new dynasty will have to come into play, and that new dynasty will start doing really well for a little while, and then they'll do poorly, and then so that's that cycle that things at the beginning. Things go really well, and then you get good things and all wonderful things happen, and then that dynasty starts getting tired, so they don't do so well. And by the things I mean they don't do well, like they stop building roads, they start overtaxing. We call it infrastructure, right? So roads, bridges, buildings. In more modern times, like that would include hospitals, libraries. Those are all infrastructures, and that's going to build up. If things don't go well, that dynasty is going to fall. It's going to crumble, and they're no longer going to be in power. I like to compare this to like a teacher at the beginning of the year. No offense to, my entire teaching community out there, right? But at the beginning of the school year, all your teachers are awesome, man. They're amazing. They're ready to go. And then by the end of the year, oh man, everybody's tired, right? And you can no one wants to stay after. The teachers don't want to stay after. The students don't want to stay after. And so that's what I like to think of with the dynasty cycle. And again, that's in China. Also, as far as religions or belief systems, China doesn't have a religion per se. They have a lot of belief systems. Confucianism, for example, is a major belief system, but not a religion in China, as well as legalism or Taoism. Those are all belief systems in China. So you're not really going to get the same religion that you would get in many other cultures. Let's see, the next one I've got here is Greece. Key things, I don't want to focus too much on some of this older stuff. Greece is, you want to think about city-states. Greece is the birthplace of democracy. Democracy, of course, is when people have all the power. So, that would be the idea that you're going to take like a direct vote versus representing people for you. Like here in the United States, we very seldom get to vote directly for issues. We do have a few things, but more than that, we're a republic. We'll get to that in a second in Rome. We're a republic, so we vote for our people to vote for us. So that the Greeks give us democracy, direct elections, where the Romans give us a republic. Very cool stuff. Hellenistic cultures. That's something that we get from the Greeks. That's the combining of cultures. It's very similar to cultural diffusion, except this is particularly sharing all Greek things throughout Greece. So if you ever look at a map of ancient Greece, there's like 14 Alexandrias, because Alexander the Great, as he conquered things, named things after himself. But he also, in the wake of all those Alexandrias, kept things very culturally Greek. So even though there's an Alexandria in Egypt, that Alexandria in Egypt is very Greek-like. And that's that Hellenistic culture. So he's going to spread the Greek culture, and he spreads it specifically to Egypt that I just mentioned, Persia, and India. And if you're confused, Persia doesn't exist anymore. So now we skip down to Rome. Rome is peninsula, much like Greece is. And that is where we get our republic, which is the government that we have here in the United States. It's the idea that we're going to ask people to represent us. So, you know, come November, like the people over the age of 18 are going to go out and they're going to vote for a president. We're not going to vote on every specific issue the president is going to say. We're going to vote and hope that that person is going to do what we want them to do. I'm not going to get political today. The Romans also give us our 12 tables of Rome, which is our law. That's very important to keep in mind. Okay, moving on. Another great one is the Gupta Empire in India. We see this quite a bit. So this is going to be something you want to focus on, is the fact that they give us a lot of math. The Gupta Empire gives us a ton of math, particularly 0. Okay, the most important thing that the Gupta people do is give us the number 0, or the placeholder of 0. I see that question a lot. Math, 0. The answer is going to be India, Gupta Empire. Then that's what I wanted to do there. The Byzantine Empire, that's going to be in Europe. Okay, now I'm going to move into, well, probably more of that global 2 stuff you've been studying recently. So probably where you started, which you might have started with the Renaissance, the Dark Ages, feudalism. So I'm just going to go over again just some really basic issues on that. Oh, I think I just messed everything up. And there's my phone. That's fun. Okay. Key things, feudalism. So you probably studied that. That's the idea that you're going to have like your different ranks. You're going to have like your lords and your estates and your peasants that are going to kind of pyramid up, which is like a key thing that we're going to look at again and again. And it was based on ownership of land, lords and vassals, who owns who has kind of the most power, and that's going to be kind of what we're seeing there with that one. The Crusades are, of course, holy wars fought between the Muslims and the Christians.
The kids can't can't chat with you over.
Okay.
So they're going to text questions to you.
Oh, I don't have my phone with me. In my house, in my car, okay. In my bag. Yep. Okay. Well, that's exciting. Hi, Mountain Lake. Apparently, you guys are going to text some questions to me. Very exciting. I'm glad to know that you guys are out there. I wonder if you guys are some of the 20 people that are watching. We just got to find the phone because I don't think that far in advance. I'll continue. So Christians, holy war, Muslims versus Christians. If that sounds familiar, that's not something we need to discuss today. It's the idea that there's going to be, who's going to win the Holy Land? Is it going to be the Muslims or the Christians? So that is that. All right, and then we move into the Renaissance, which is a rebirth. It's a rebirth of Greek and Roman culture, which is very exciting. And we've got a phone. This is how live action. Thank you.
Exciting.
It's very exciting. Oh. What is colonialization? Good question. Colonialization is the idea that when a major country is controlling another country. So for example, if I am in Great Britain, colonialization is when I would own India. And that happens. So England is my best example, my favorite example of colonialism, because the phrase was actually the sun never set on the British Empire. So what would happen is they actually own land from Australia to major chunks of Africa and Asia, South America, and of course here in North America, they owned the United States for a while, the 13 original colonies, and Canada for a little while. So that's colonialism. We also could use the word imperialism. For those of you who have just done World War I with me, we know that that's one of the main causes of World War I. So let's see if there's another question coming through, because I see 2 messages. Oh, hi, Kate. Okay. All right, so also humanism. I know one of my students out there knows exactly what that is. And that's a rebirth and a new way of thinking during the Renaissance, where it's less about religion, more about the actual human value. So that's in the Renaissance. Also, some key 2 people of writing that stick out to me. Machiavelli writes The Prince, and Dante writes The Inferno. And one of the things that's cool about Dante writing the Inferno is he writes in Italian, not in Latin. So he's actually writing it for the common people, not for, highfalutin, super smart people. I want to say something else about that. I don't remember what it was. Oh, the printing press. Okay, so the Renaissance is also going to be spurred on because Johann Gutenberg invents the printing press, which allows us to spread information easier. All right, Renaissance, got that, check. Japanese empires. We got the Powhatan Empire, which is where we see feudalism in Japan, very similar to feudalism in the Middle Ages. That idea that there's going to be a code, like a lower peasant class and an upper lord vassal class. And in that, they're going to have a Bushinto, which is their own code of conduct. Again, keep in mind, Japan ends up extremely isolated for centuries because they are on an island. So that's key. Just checking, seeing if we got any questions on the YouTube. Nope. Oh, shoot, I pressed play. I'm going to start talking to my own self over here. Okay. Mesoamerica, I know this is something that I don't cover too much. One of the key things here, Mesoamerica is referring to that Central America. So if you have North America and South America, Mesoamerica is, Mexico down to like maybe Peru. And you're looking there, you have the Mayas, the Aztec, and the Incas. One of my favorite things to talk about for that is the step pyramids, and the step terracing. So the idea is if you have a hill, it's hard to garden on a hill, right? But if you terrace it out, you can garden going like steps. And that's terrace farming, and that's a use of space on the mountains like in Peru, where you could grow things on those mountains that you would normally not be able to grow. So they do terrace farming. And that, for the most part, is kind of what I see on the exams when it comes to Mesoamerica or South America. All right, moving on to my next page, the Reformation. I know my students know this pretty well, so I'm not going to focus too awful much unless I hear some major questions from people outside in the outside world. Reformation is kind of kicking the hiney out of the Catholic Church. Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther is a German monk, okay? He is going to create the 95 Thesis, and where he's going to list 95 things that were wrong with the Catholic Church. Creates a whole new religion called Lutheranism. And then followed by him, you get John Calvin. He creates the Calvinist Church. You also end up with Henry VIII creating the Anglican Church, the Church of England. So that's that on that one, okay? Absolutism. Lots of things to mention here. Absolutism, of course, is absolute power. Okay, more than likely I would actually say that the questions referring to absolutism is going to actually refer specifically to certain people, and we'll say like which person is an absolute ruler. So here are some people who are absolute rulers for you. You've got Akbar the Great. He's out of India, okay? You've got Charles V. He's out of Spain. You got Philip II, also out of Spain. You got Louis XVI out of France. You got Peter the Great out of Russia. Okay, those are all absolute rulers. They are not going to take no for an answer. Other example, if it has the Great or the Terrible after their name, they're probably an absolute ruler. You can probably also guess if it's a king or queen, they probably were, and it's on your exam, they're probably an absolute ruler either also. You know, and of course you can put into question whether, you know, someone like a Hitler is an absolute ruler. If it's an essay and you understand Hitler and they're asking about absolute rulers, go for him. I don't think he's going to be a question as far as a multiple choice absolute ruler. But, you know, you got a thematic essay and it's asking about absolute rulers and you know Hitler, you understand him. Well, I hope you don't understand him, but you understand the history behind him, then go with it. One of the things that is also key to understanding absolutism is the fall of absolutism. So if the absolute rulers had all this power, how do they start to lose it? Well, the best example takes place in England or Great Britain. Remember, those terms are interchangeable, right? So if you are in England or Great Britain and you're the king or the queen of Great Britain, then you have all this power, except the people start to realize this, and it's not going so well. So the English Commons, which is their parliament, right, part of their lower house, they ex-nay this whole thing by creating something called the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is the Great Charter, and that means that the Magna Carta is where we have the kings lose their power. And it was originally unwritten. It's an unwritten document originally. It's written down now that limits the powers of the king and queen of England. And you know, up until today, I mean, the Queen of England is nothing more than a figurehead. She actually has little to no power. Okay, I'm looking at our time. We're doing pretty good considering we had a rough start to begin with. So. Now, my next thing, I have the scientific revolution next on my list. Not too much to say. Scientific revolution is a birth of paying attention to science. You know, a couple big things that come out of this. You know, of course, gravity, because we always had gravity, but Isaac Newton decides that that's what makes the apple fall in your head. But more importantly, you have Copernicus and Galileo, proving that the Earth is the center of the universe. Okay, this is two main things. So obviously we know they're right. The Earth is, or sorry, did I say the Earth? No, the sun is the center of the universe. Okay, and that everything else is going to revolve around it. This messes up religions, so that's why it's not kind of believed for a little while, because that means that God wasn't the center of the universe and didn't create the Earth to be the center of the universe. But once they discover that it's the sun, they also give it a new name. It's called the heliocentric model. Helo meaning sun, and centered meaning the center. So we now figured out that everything else is revolving around the sun, not everything revolving around Earth. And that's that. So the sun-centered theory, the heliocentric theory. Another couple questions. What did Alexander the Great take after? I don't know if can I go over? Yes, I can go over thematic essay. So Alexander the Great took over most of southern Europe, actually most of Europe, over into Asia and also down into Africa. He was a leader in Greece. Honestly, don't think you're going to see too much details about him. I think the biggest details, again, that you'll see about Alexander the Great is going to be specifically referring to his spreading of culture. So that Hellenistic culture, him spreading the Greek culture around, like I said, to Egypt, to Persia, and to Asia, and to India. He's going to take a little bit north, but it's not quite as important there. But again, I don't think you're going to see any specific questions about Alexander the Great. As far as the thematic essay goes, I can go over it and I can give my hints. I don't have the answers, unfortunately, or else all my students would pass the exam because I would have given them to you guys. Just kidding. So no, I don't know what's on it. But the key thing is, I'm kind of thinking it might have something to do with geography. Like I mentioned before, geographic features, you know, what's important, you know, like how do humans affect geography? But what you want to do is you want to get your intro paragraph, right? And they always give you some of those great examples. Like they give you that historical information. If you don't know what the heck you're doing, start not rewriting it. That's plagiarism, but taking a few things a little bit from each of those and changing that up, flipping the order around, and rewriting that paragraph, right? So, and that's of course what we do if you have no idea what's going on. Which, I mean, I'll tell you the truth, it's possible. This is, you know, 2 years of history that you've been taking. It's, you know, anything in world history that could possibly be there. So it's possible. You may get an exam and not know what to write on that. So you got your intro, right? And then they almost always give you some suggestions. So if it was, well, we can go to my I thought there about geographic features, right? If it'll say like some suggestions you may want to include about how humans affect, or how geography affects humans, might include isolationism in Japan, you know, or in islands in Japan, peninsulas in Italy, and then, you know, so they give you a whole bunch for examples, right? And you want to take those and run with whatever you got. If you really don't know what the heck you're doing, you're just going to run with any little information you feel like you can throw in there to help you with those examples. Let's see, I got another question coming in. This is like the Russian Revolution. I love that. We'll do that right now. And I just made my students write some stuff that included the Communist Revolution. I'll pull out some of my notes too, so I can kind of go through it that way. So here we go. Here's some good stuff. Just so I can kind of see what the heck I'm doing. So, okay, the key thing, this isn't it, so I'm just going to have to do it from memory. All right, so the Russian Revolution. Well, we start with an absolute ruler. Tsar Nicholas II, I believe. I could be wrong on the number. I'd have to double check that number. Tsar Nicholas II, pretty sure about it. Tsar Nicholas II has taken power, or has power. His family's had power for centuries. He's an absolute ruler. He has divine right? So he's getting his power from God. He's not doing a great job at being the king, being the czar, spelled with a C or a T. And we have people who were saying, like, hold on, this is no good. And they start to go towards this idea of Marxism, which had been created by a man named Karl Marx years before, in the 1800s, and the Russian Revolution happens in the 1900s. 1917 is when it's in full effect. I did that off memory. So when the Russian Revolution starts, it's based on this idea of Marxism, which is coming from Vladimir Lenin. And Vladimir Lenin was leading a communist revolution, because in order to understand the Russian Revolution, you need to understand the communist revolution. And the communist revolution is a really great idea to begin with. Communism in it of itself is a great idea. It's the idea that everyone will have the same thing. No matter what job they do or what they have, everyone is going to have the same thing. So we're all going to live in the same house. Well, not the same house, but we're going to have the same style house. We're all going to have the same amount of food. We're going to have the same, doctors that we're going to get to go to, same medical coverage. It's going to be a great idea. It never really works. That practice doesn't work. But that's the idea of communism. And it's also about industrialization, because in a communist society, everything is owned by the government, not by individual people. So let's say I am growing tomatoes, okay? And that's what I'm going to do. At the end of the growing season, the government would actually take all of my tomatoes. They'd give me some money, and then I would have to go back to the store to buy my tomatoes back. But they would do this with everybody. So my next door neighbor's growing cucumbers, and they have all their cucumbers taken, they're given money, and now they have to go buy cucumbers. But when they go to the store, they can buy cucumbers and tomatoes, because the store now contains my tomatoes and their cucumbers. So this is the idea of communism. It's this grouped together society. So as you can imagine, when there was an absolute ruler and a very higher up, in Russia, the people, the common people were starving as the czar was living high in the hills. Okay, and so this idea of communism is a really great idea because they're going to level out that playing field, right? So if we can get the rich and the poor to be equal, then everyone's going to be happy. So Vladimir Lenin leads this communist revolution, and ta-da, that's ultimately what comes the communist revolution. It's relatively, well, there's a major issue on it's called Bloody Sunday. In case you're curious, there's like 3 Bloody Sundays. So I don't remember exactly what date this particular Bloody Sunday happens, but in this one, there's in Red Square, center of Moscow, there is a revolt that happens. And so that's one of the, but for the most part, the Communist Revolution and the Russian Revolution, it's a relatively peaceful revolution to start. And, it's a form, and the idea is that the Communist or Russian Revolution makes it now a very different government than the United States, Great Britain, France, Germany, any of those other countries is now very different because it's got this communism thing that we don't quite understand, or we do and we still don't like it. I don't know why we don't like it. It doesn't work, and that's ultimately what happens is it doesn't work. Just like absolutism, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. So it doesn't, unfortunately, work the way they want it to. And with that, if you don't mind, I skipped some stuff, but I think it's important to take a look at. I found my notes on the Communist Revolution. Let's see if I got everything I wanted to say. Lenin and USSR. Okay, they also changed their name from Russia to the USSR, which is the United Soviet Socialist Republics, right? And then after Lenin dies, Joe Stalin, good old Uncle Joe, as Roosevelt called him, FDR called him, or it's Roosevelt's kids called him Uncle Joe. And let's see, oh, this makes sense. Yeah, we talked about a totalitarian state where the government has harsh controls over all aspects of life, music, art, all that sort of thing. I talked about collectivism. I didn't say the word. That's a good word to use. Collectivism is that idea that there's going to be one farm. You're going to make one thing, and then you're going to sell it to us. We'll give you money. You're going to go buy it again. They had a plan that was going to take 5 years to kind of make it through this industrial communist revolution. And this is good. Well, not good. He also goes through the purge, which is the idea that anyone inside that isn't doing what he wants to do, Joe Stalin, wants to do, he is going to get rid of. So concentration camps, sending people to Siberia. These are all the plans he's got. I just realized that there were comments coming through. No, there weren't. Okay. So it's not just Hitler who has concentration camps. Joe Stalin does too. And the Russians are the first to sign the non-aggression pact with Germany, saying that like we won't, all get involved in this together. Let's see. A little bit again, another communist country, China. It's still communist today, financially communist, or socially communist, not financially communist. And let's see, what do I want to? It's again rise of a lower class. It's led by a man named Mao Zedong, and he was in a civil war with other people in China, and he ultimately wins, and therefore kind of gets to take over with communism. He comes up with, very similar to Stalin's plan, he comes up with something called the Great Leap Forward, where he's going to try to push China into the next step, into the industrial age. It doesn't work. Oh, do 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 do. And of course, China is still communist. He also goes through a cultural revolution. He's going to try to strengthen communism in China. One of the coolest things, he creates a little book called the Little Red Book. Everyone and their uncle has to read this stupid little pamphlet. I don't know, it's like that big, but it's tiny. It's like, you know, pocket size, like your pocket size constitution, which you should always be carrying with you. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about there? We have, you know, communism, other places, some key things. Actually, this is pretty big. After kind of, Russia going communist, and you got China going communist, and Russia keeps pulling all these other people in to the revolution, to their sphere of influence. The United States, hold on. They say, hold on. We don't want this to happen. It's not just the United States. It's the United States and our allies, right? So that's going to include, and this is after, I'm doing a lot of jumping around because I'm trying to do this all in 1 hour. So this is after World War II. So this is when communism spreading from Russia into China and into other places around the world. And the United States and our allies say, hold on, we don't want this anymore. We're going to contain you. We're going to get you to stay where you were. And there's two key places that containment is going to happen, and that's Korea and Vietnam. And so those are, you know, and this could be kind of questionable if you're going to see this on this exam or next year's American history exam. Ultimately, Korea will be split into, to now, I mean, North Korea and South Korea are two separate countries, North Korea being communist, South Korea being a free country like ours, a capitalist country. You know, and we were involved in this very long war in Korea over this, and then also Vietnam. Vietnam ultimately becomes strictly communism, and it's a communist country still today. And the other one of our big countries that we are concerned about with communism is, of course, Cuba. Cuba became a concern to us in the United States because they're so close. They're 90 miles from the United States. So when Fidel Castro takes over and becomes a communist leader in Cuba, we get really worried. He's 90 miles from us. We think he has nuclear missiles in Cuba. So the United States wants to, you know, invade and kind of take that over. And of course, communism is still in Cuba. We're coming down to the wire here, so I'm just looking for some key things and kind of giving some last few minute pep talks here. Oh, here's a good one. Oh, you guys, that's me backwards, isn't it? Yes, I can't do that. I didn't think about flipping it. Some key economic systems. Okay, you got your traditional, your market, your command, and your mixed economies. Those are all economic systems. Okay, traditional, that's going to be based on like your bartering and trading. It's the name of it says it all. So it's going to be how we originally had our economics. You know, that guy wants an apple and I have an orange. I want an apple and he wants an orange. We switch. Or I grow. I'm a good gardener. My next door neighbor is really good at mowing lawns. I grow his plants. He mows my lawn, and we don't actually exchange money over that. So that's traditional. Market economy is based on supply and demand. So, you know, the demand for this phone is probably extremely low. So you can get this phone really cheaply because who the heck wants it? Where the new iPhone, whatever, 11, making up numbers, might cost a lot of money, right? Because the supply and the demand is really high. So there's going to be a large supply of these because everyone's throwing them out. So you can get these for really cheap. And the new iPhone, maybe there's not as many of them. So more people, you know, you're willing to pay more money for them. Command economy is when you're looking at like what is necessary. So it's controlled by a strong central government. It's usually focused on your industrial goods. Okay. And then your mixed economy is a combination of your market and your command economy. And command economy also has to do with like things that you need, like that's not even coming into question. Like you need soap. At least I hope you need soap. You all need soap, whether you're using it or not. It's a whole nother question, but we all need soap. Okay. Movement of people, kings, queens, religion. If you are in need of religion, it is not the most exciting, not your own religion. You're in need of religious studying. Not my most entertaining video, but I do have a video on world religions worth taking a look at if you don't know what the heck you're doing for religions. It was last year's question, so I don't think it's going to be this year's question. Cause and effect. Here's some good stuff. No, not what I want to do. Cause and effects of World War I. Remember your main causes of World War I: militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, and then the spark, the shooting of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophia. Some vocab to think about in the next couple minutes here. Man, we cover a lot. Interdependence. Okay, if you hear interdependence, I want you thinking about having to be relied on another country. So we have an interdependence right now with oil-producing countries. We're slowly getting off of it, right? But we have an economic issue there. So we are dependent on other countries for certain things. You know, we don't grow cinnamon in the United States, and we're dependent on cinnamon producing countries. We're interdependent. I can't believe how much we got covered today. Golden Age of Islam, lots of advancements in math and science. They have a lot of wisdom. They're writing in calligraphy, fancy script. Oh, the steppes, the Mongols. These guys are great. So the Mongols, of course, living in Central Asia, in current day Mongolia. Spent a lot of time figuring that one out. They live on the steppes, which is the term for grassland. They're excellent horsemen. They invented the stirrup so they could ride for long periods of time. The stirrup, I've seen it as a multiple choice question more than once. So if you see the word stirrup, okay, it's referring to horses. It's referring to the Mongols. Excellent horsemen, allows them to ride for long periods of time. It also allows them to be extremely good at fighting. That's kind of probably what I'm going to be at today. I've got to get going too because I have a little child that needs to be put to bed. Oh, here's one that one of my students was asking me about today, mercantilism. If you're there, you know who you are. I don't want to say your name, although everyone in the world's got your name, so it's not a big deal. This is the economic theory and development practiced by European cultures. That's the fancy thing that it says here in my own notes. That means that it's trade. Mercantilism is trade. It's, again, particularly referring to a triangle trade. And it's basically saying, too, it's the idea that, like, if I'm chopping down lumber, I'm selling that lumber to the people. So I'm here in the United States, right? Chopping down lumber. I send that lumber to Europe. In Europe, they turn that into a beautiful cabinet. Then they sell that back to me. That's mercantilism. It's this kind of flip-flopping back and forth of things that have happened over and over again. John Locke unlocks our human rights, life, liberty, and property, different than Thomas Jefferson's life, liberty, and property. Okay, John Locke unlocks our human rights and also says to us that the government has to help us keep those human rights. And if they don't, we can revolt. That's, I think, nationalism, love for one's country. It's Flag Day tomorrow. Happy Flag Day. Karl Marx, he's the guy who invented the idea of communism. Okay, interesting guy. Gandhi does a walk through India to get the English out of there. Treaty of Versailles ends World War I think that's where we're going to end for tonight. I hope everyone had a good time. I again apologize for the issues at the beginning, and I hope everyone does really well in their exams tomorrow. Study hard. Don't study too much because you want to get a good night's sleep tonight. If you are looking for more videos, go to Hip Hughes History. He's got some really awesome videos. He does focus mostly on United States, but he does have some really good U.S. history, lots of good global history stuff out there too. He's from the great state of New York as well, so he's going to be helping those of you out there who are looking for Regents review stuff tonight. Also, make sure you're checking out regentsprep.org, which is based out of Oswego school districts. They got some really great multiple choice, gives you some questions and answers, really cool stuff. But ultimately, guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this broadcast. Again, apologize for the technical issues we had at the beginning, but I really appreciated everyone coming in, staying here 8 o'clock tonight in my living room kitchen area. So best of luck. Remember on those essays, if you feel like you don't know it, take a deep breath and think about it again, because I am pretty sure you can come up with something on these regencies. Believe it or not, the state of New York does not want you to fail these things. They want you to pass. Okay, so all your teachers. So do your very best, relax, take a look at those essays maybe before you can start your multiple choice, and go back to them a little bit. You'll do fine. Okay, so study hard tonight, get a good night's sleep, and best of luck tomorrow, guys. Bye.